Alright, motherfuckers, back at it again. I felt like episode 13 wasn't quite finished. I felt like I needed a third part. Excuse me. Because I kind of got to a certain part in the story, and there was still quite a bit more to tell. And I didn't like how I kind of just rushed it and wrapped it up at the end of part 2, especially on such a kind of a heavy note. So I decided I needed to just bang out part 3 real fast and get it out of the way before, I move on to the next episode. Otherwise, I'll never get back to it, and excuse me, the whole flow of the story and all that shit will be lost. So, if I remember correctly, because I never listen to my episodes anymore, if I remember correctly, where I left off at the end of part 2, I was talking a little bit about, basically, well, I had talked a lot about, how I'd spent, about 5 years doing some, seriously heavy self-brainwashing. That was literally my intent. I was doing it on purpose. I was taking these epic doses of DXM, aka Robitussin, Robotrippin, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And people still don't seem to understand unless they've done unless they've robo-tripped before themselves. People think the whole cough syrup thing is a fucking joke, or they misunderstand what I mean when I say cough syrup. They think I'm talking about, the shit with codeine in it, and I am not talking about codeine at all. That is a completely different fucking drug, completely different sensation, completely different high, and in no way, shape, or form is cough syrup with codeine even remotely what I'm talking about. I'm purely talking about DXM, cough syrup with DXM as the only active ingredient. And if you're confused about what DXM is, just Google search it. There's plenty of shit out there, and I don't really have the time or the patience to really go in depth about the drug itself and necessarily what it does. I mean, it's too deep of a topic for me to ramble on about when I'm trying to really discuss my use of the drug more than I'm trying to discuss the drug itself. But like I said in previous parts of this episode, it's got a lot of similarities to PCP, some similarities to ketamine. It has dissociative properties, as well as deliriant properties, as well as psychedelic properties. It's kind of like mixing mushrooms, a little bit of mushrooms, a little bit of PCP, a little bit of ketamine, all together. And you have a lot of euphoria. At least for me, I had intense euphoria to the point of, I'm not a religious person by any means, but I do have my own personal spiritual philosophies. I don't like to talk about them too much because, nobody wants to hear anybody drone on about spirituality and shit. But basically, I tend to look at the universe as a whole, the universe in general. I tend I tend to look at the universe basically as, you know, if God exists, to me, God is the universe. Whether that's, you know, and I'm not saying the universe is sentient or any of that shit. All I'm saying is, if you want to get fundamental and technical about it, you know, all creation as we know it has come from the universe. You know what I'm saying? And this particular philosophy isn't it's not new. There are people, I want to say it's got a label. If I'm correct about it, I think it's pantheism. You know, you can Google pantheism, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is basically, you know, a spiritual belief or religious belief that the universe itself is God, and we are all the universe experiencing itself in human form. Basically, it's a super cliched thing to say, especially if you've, and I hate to use the word, if you consider yourself quote unquote woke in any way. If you've had a particularly profound psychedelic experience in the last 5 years, you've probably heard a lot of this type of shit from a lot of different people. You know, you are the universe, you are stardust, you're the universe experiencing itself in human form, and, you know, all of these really romantic, cool ideas. And I won't say I buy into all of that shit, but I choose to gravitate towards that particular form of spirituality than any other, because I like it. It suits me, and it suits the kind of person I am and who I want to be. You know, and I incorporate the karma philosophy quite a bit in my day-to-day living. And I've taken these ideas, and I've basically, a lot of people laugh at me, but I formed my own religion. I only call it a religion as a joke. It's basically a joke, pointing the finger at organized religion and all that. I'll make a whole podcast based on that at a later time. I don't want to get too in depth about it. Basically, it's just a guide for living, for being a good human being, and expanding your consciousness and all this bullshit. You know, yada fucking yada. That's not what this episode is about. But during the heaviest, you know, and I shouldn't say the heaviest. I mean, I was heavily using DXM, like I said, for about 5 years. And during this 5-year time span, that's when I became spiritual, you know, and I developed my own personal philosophies. I listened to a lot of Alan Watts, a lot of Terence McKenna, who, two people I highly recommend it. If you have an hour to just piss away, highly recommend just YouTube Terence McKenna or Alan Watts and just listen to whatever you find, because I believe that, I mean, it's some pretty powerful shit, and if you're an open-minded individual, some of that shit will probably strike a chord with you. At least it did for me. Alan Watts especially, you know, he says he's just got a really poetic way of speaking, you know what I mean? And he says he's got some beautiful fucking speeches. But while I was using DXM on a regular heavy basis, you know, I stumbled upon some of this shit. I stumbled upon Terence McKenna and Alan Watts, and these really profound speeches, and you know, I looked into Buddhism and all this shit, and I really became somewhat of a spiritual person while I was balls deep in the DXM experience. And so I would take these massive doses of DXM. I'm talking a minimum of 2 on a light day. I would take 2 bottles of cough syrup on a light day. 2 bottles of either I can never remember if it's either 5 ounces or 5 milliliters. I'm not 100% positive, but two bottles, two regular sized bottles of cough syrup. That's a light day. That's just a feel good high. But I was going balls deep. Sometimes 3 bottles, sometimes 4 bottles, sometimes 5 bottles. And not only would I do 3 to 5 bottles of this shit, but I would do that initial 3 to 5 bottles, get it in my system, you know, get my brain all lubricated, how I used to refer to it, and still, I guess, still do. You know, and as soon as the trip hit me, because it definitely is a trip, you know, you cannot call it anything else. You cannot underestimate DXM as a drug. I mean, that shit will hit you from left field if you're not prepared for it. It's incredibly potent and incredibly powerful if you do it like I did. It's probably not fucking healthy at all. There's very little research done on what regular use of cough syrup does to you, and I'm not talking just doses that you take because you're sick. No, like I said, I'm talking 3 to 5 bottles, 3 to 5 times a week, if not more. Right? I mean, I was putting so much fucking cough syrup through my kidneys and my fucking liver. So much cough syrup. And it would put me in these super heightened states of mind where I was almost under a certain form of hypnosis, right? Where I was very susceptible to suggestion. Very susceptible to suggestion. If I'm rolling hard on a DXM trip and I'm listening to we'll just say one of my favorite albums. I can't even remember the name of the album, but the band is Nothing More, and they're not their newest album coming out, but the album that came out a couple years ago. They have some Alan Watts passages. You know, they took some of Alan Watts' messages, some of his recordings, and they played it over, you know, really cool, chill, atmospheric background music. And I'm telling you, man, when you're not expecting those things, you're just listening to music, right? And you're super fucking high. And I hate to use the word high, because a lot of people just think, oh, you're high like on weed, right? No, you're on an incredibly mind-altering substance that fucks with your perception on many levels, which was one of the things I loved about it. I loved seeing things from other perspectives. So when to me, I used DXM in place of psychedelics because I couldn't get psychedelics. If I could have gotten my hands on acid or shrooms on a regular basis, I'd be telling you about the 5 years I spent doing acid and mushrooms. 100%. 100%. DXM is not a good substitute for psychedelics. But I couldn't get psychedelics, so I used DXM. And I embraced it. I embraced it 100%. So when you're constantly putting these super powerful chemicals through your brain, and you're constantly in this other realm of consciousness, you're very susceptible to suggestion. And I'd be listening to, a Nothing More album, and all of a sudden, bam, out of nowhere, on a hidden track, or on the last track of the album, there's an Alan Watts speech. And that shit fucking hit me right in the gut. And I truly believed in that moment, and for a long time afterwards, I truly believed that was the universe communicating to me. 100%. Because when I was in this state of, I'm going to call it orgasmic spirituality, and that's not an understatement. When I'm in these super elevated states of mind, and just all of this euphoria and all of this love and all of this overwhelming positive sensations I'm experiencing, and all of this shit, because that's really what it is. It was all bullshit, right? I was heavily under the influence of drugs, but because the experiences were so positive to me, they were so overwhelmingly self-affirming and so positive and so full of love and understanding and all of this shit. It was so good and so positive that I took it hook, line, and sinker as this can't be fake, right? This can't just be a chemical reaction in my mind. No, I've opened up a portal by using this drug, because I really looked at it as like a psychedelic, and by using this psychedelic, I'm opening my mind and amplifying it to become a receiver, so to speak, to receive the signals from the universe. And I truly believe the universe was talking to me through the music I was listening to, through the videos I would see online, through the people I would meet every day. 100%, I believed everything was a sign. Everything. And during those times, there was a 1 to 2 year period where I believed all of this shit had a purpose to it. All of it. All of it. Every new person I met on Facebook, every interaction I had with somebody, every fucking song that I listened to that struck a chord with me, every video that I saw that inspired me, every sunset that moved me, every animal in nature that fucking surprised me, and it just these beautiful moments and these super profound experiences, it all, like it felt like I was a magnet for everything that was amazing, and these chemicals that I was ingesting were making me basically like a fucking satellite dish, and I was receiving all of this amazing information from the universe, and I truly felt like the universe was speaking to me in many different forms, and even to the point where I thought the universe was speaking to me in the form of my own thoughts. You know what I'm saying? I would be super fucked up and under a mega dose of DXM, and I still have the notebook. It's somewhere around here in my apartment. I still have a notebook where I filled this notebook, this 200-page notebook of these just random scribblings, and I've saved it to remind myself. But I've saved it to remind myself of how fucking ridiculous I had gotten, right? But basically, for a couple of months, there was a time where I was taking these massive doses, and I would go into this deep trance, and I would meditate, and I would go so fucking deep inside myself, and I would try to talk to the universe in the form of my own thoughts. I would ask the universe a question, and literally the very next thing that went through my mind, I took it as the universe answering me. The universe was communicating to me in the form of my own thoughts, and I would write them down. And that's when I started developing all of these really crazy things, these crazy thoughts that the universe had chosen me. I was supposed to figure out how to save the world. And not only was I supposed to figure out how to save the world, but I was supposed to figure it out really fucking fast. Because something terrible was going to happen. Something terrible was going to happen, and it was going to happen soon. And if I wasn't able to find the answer, basically the world as we know it was going to end. And what I mean by the world as we know it was going to be the end of humanity, human civilization. I made a lot of people nervous during this time. I was so convinced and convicted in these ideas. I completely believed them. 100%. This was my destiny. And I believed it so much. I truly believed, that's, and I developed a lot of my ideas, a lot of my creative ideas during this process. I created the brand Karma Soldiers, which I have not talked about at all since the relaunch of the podcast. If you go back and listen to some of the older 15-minute episodes, I talk about Karma Soldiers. But basically, Karma Soldiers was just this brand that I had created, and I said in part 2 of this episode that I felt like I needed to basically build an army to save the world, and the army that I thought I was supposed to build were these Karma Soldiers. I was supposed to build an army of people who followed the karma philosophy, an army of like-minded individuals who wanted to change the world for the better, and they were willing to do anything at almost any cost, as long as what they did followed the karma philosophy to a T. Like, you had to be positive and uplifting, and the things you wanted to do had to be helpful. You couldn't just go out and kill a bunch of people in the name of karma. Like, you couldn't just fucking, you couldn't hurt anybody, really. You had to take over the world with love. It was basically the goal. Take over the world with love, with critical thinking, with basically just fucking be a good fucking human being, right? And I felt like I truly believed that I was supposed to, I was the spark of the revolution, this whole new revolution. And it went a little bit further to the point where I believed we were all in a simulation. I truly believed we were in the Matrix, and I was Neo, and I had to figure out how to break free. And it was such a strong, powerful experience, especially when I'm drilling this home. I'm doing this to myself over and 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 not to fucking beat a dead horse, but over and over and over again for 5 fucking years. I did this to myself to the point where I basically I thought I was Jesus reincarnated. You know what I mean? And I was so convinced that every new breakthrough I had, every new development I made, every new fucking epiphany that happened, I was like, I'm winning here. I just need to do this one more time. I need to get a little bit higher. I need to go a little bit deeper. I need to experience this more so I understand exactly what the universe is trying to tell me, so I can go and accomplish it, right? And I thought that the universe was trying to tell me that I was supposed to do all this shit, and I was given certain gifts, right? I was given certain talents that came naturally to me, and I was going to use those gifts or those talents to basically make myself famous, right? And once I became famous, I would then use that platform to change the world. Excuse me. I believe that these gifts that were given to me, we'll say my talent for writing, or my ability as a musician, or at this point in time, I truly thought I could be a stand-up comedian. And I still think that I could do that. I think I have that within me. But at this point, I truly believe that the universe had given this gift to me. And because the universe had blessed me, all I had to do was just fucking get up on stage and do it. And the universe would provide, because it was my fucking destiny. All I had to do was figure out how to get famous. And so I started doing various different shit, and it's one of the things that I tried doing was stand-up comedy. I went to an open mic night, and I was up there for about 15 minutes. And I was not funny. I got some laughs. I wasn't funny. And I said a lot of this shit. A lot of this shit that was going through my mind. A lot of these things that I thought, that I was literally the savior of humanity. A lot of that type of shit. And so that first open mic night, it felt really good. It went fairly well, not because I was funny, but because I was such a weird character that everyone was interested. I had hypnotize the audience into paying attention. I wasn't being funny. I recorded this shit on video, and I've watched it a couple of times since, and it's devastating. it's so cringeworthy. It's ridiculous. I was not funny. There was a couple of times I made them laugh. I impressed them a little bit with my guitar skills. But mostly I was just this really weird guy saying a lot of really weird shit. And everyone was kind of captivated for that moment. And I took that as a major success. I was like, dude, I fucking slayed it. I slayed that shit. And I was like, stand-up comedy is where it's at. That's what's going to get me to the next level. You know, because, you know, like I said, I've been a big fan of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast for about 5 years now. And, you know, he has a lot of comedians on his show. You know, Joe Rogan really inspired me to try comedy. And, so, dude, I was like, I'm gonna run balls deep with this comedy shit. And at the same time, I'm also being catfished, which I had never heard of the term catfished, or the phrase catfished, whatever the fuck. I didn't know catfishing was a fucking thing until now. And so I'm higher than a goddamn fucking eagle pussy. And this girl starts talking to me out of nowhere on fucking Facebook, right? And she's got a bunch of pictures uploaded, and I don't look too deep into her profile or none of that shit. I've never heard of catfishing. So there's this super gorgeous girl who's paying all kinds of attention to me, and she's saying I'm amazing, and we have this awesome connection and all this shit. And she tells me she needs money for food. She's in a hard time. And I'm like, babe, don't worry. I'm about to make it big with stand-up comedy. And so she kept saying, hey, I need money for food. You know, like, I don't mean to be a fucking needy bitch or whatever, but, you know, I'm in a hard spot. I really like you, blah, blah, fucking blah. Can you send me any money? And I'm like, I don't currently have a job, but here's the thing. These are my goals, these are my passions, these are my thoughts, these are my fucking beliefs or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to do this stand-up comedy. I really think it's going to take off. Give me a little bit of time. I'm going to go around town. I'm going to hit up all the bars. I'm going to say, hey, you know, I want to do some stand-up comedy. I'll try to bring some people in. And we'll see what happens. I've done an open mic night. You know, I promise you I'm funny. Like, I had this unwavering belief in myself. I was so sure that I was gonna be fucking hilarious. And I finally booked a gig at one of the bars. I made flyers and everything. And I promoted it on Facebook. I was like, come see me at the bar, blah, blah, fucking blah. I know I've said blah, blah like 3 fucking times. I shouldn't keep saying that. It irritates me every time I say it. But anyway, so I'm like, come check me out at the bar. I'm going to be here on such and such date at such and such time. And I promise you I'm going to be funny. Come check me out. So I showed up. First of all, nobody came to the gig. Nobody. Second of all, I showed up and the guy wasn't ready for me to be there. Like, it was a hard sell just to get him to let me perform. And I had to basically tell him, like, look, I'll perform for free. But if I bring a crowd and things go well, we'll talk about payment after that, right? I'm willing to perform for free just to get the ball rolling. And so I showed up. I did as much promotion as I could. nobody came. And when I got there, the dude was like, "Oh, you're actually gonna try this shit, right? Well, here's the thing. We only got about 8 or 9 regulars in here right now. Nobody else is here. If you want to do this, do it." And he hands me a microphone. I don't even get a stage or nothing to stand on. He hands me a microphone, and now I gotta stand here and be funny in front of like 8 or 9 old people. Totally not even close to my target audience, right? My target audience is like 18 to 40. Those are the people I can connect with, and those are the people I think I can make laugh. And literally everybody in this bar was like 50 plus. And after about 5 minutes, they're like, "Dude, you need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself. You need to leave." And I'm like, "All right, thank you for your fucking wonderful constructive criticism. Alrighty then." And I dip out, and I brought my brother along to this thing because I was so sure it was going to be a success. So I bombed miserably in front of my brother, and then I was like, all right, so that sucked. Let's go back and do another open mic night, like a week later. And again, I bring my brother to this as well, and I'm like, I'm so unprepared. You know, I didn't fucking prepare any material at all. You know, I wrote some jokes down. I stole some jokes off the internet, and I tried to make them my own. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go up there and I'm going to wing it. I'm going to fucking freestyle it like I did last time. My brother's going to be there. I'm going to show him, hey, you know, there's something to this. You know, that bar thing was a joke, whatever. So I get up on that stage, and I'm finally faced with the fact that maybe I'm wrong. You know, because that gig at the bar didn't go well. And if the universe is trying to put me on a path to save the world, why the fuck would I fail so fucking terribly at the bar? You know, if this is truly the universe's plan for me, why didn't that gig go well? You know what I mean? And so I'm up on stage now, and the audience is different than it was the last time. There's a couple people that were there from last time, but it's different. It's a whole different vibe. And I literally forget all of my material that I half-assed prepared. I forget it all of it. And after about 5 minutes, I apologize to everyone. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm clearly not ready for this, and I've forgotten all my jokes. And the first time I was up on stage, there were no nerves, there was no jitters, there was nothing, because I had that unwavering belief in myself. But now, since I bombed so miserably at the bar, I'm full of doubt. I'm full of insecurities, and I can't make this work. Like, I'm eating so much dick right now. And after 5 minutes, I apologize, and I walk off stage. And they were incredibly supportive. You know, they were a really nice crowd of people. It's probably like 20 or 30 people tops. They were very nice. They're very nice. So I get off stage and I sit down at a table, and for the first time in a long time, like, my wind is completely taken out of my sails, and I'm questioning everything. I'm questioning all of the beliefs that I've developed over the last couple of years. I'm questioning all the confidence I had in myself. I'm full of doubts. I'm full of insecurities. And literally what had happened was this grand delusion I had built for myself had come crashing down, all in this one experience, or these two experiences. And I was forced to acknowledge the fact that I had been being delusional as fuck. And during this time, I'm getting evicted from the house I'm renting. I had to go stay in a camper of a friend of mine, Chastity Bew, which I eventually blocked her from Facebook because I owe her money, and I fucked up. I fucked up so much. I fucked up so much at this point. You know, Chastity, out of the kindness of her heart, she'd let me stay in her camper that she had on her family's farm. I spent the month of November in this camper. November in Minnesota, mind you, it gets down to, 20 degrees at night sometimes in December. Or not December, but November. So I spent the month of November with no heat, with no electricity, just me in a sleeping bag and my cat. And no internet, no nothing. And I'm out there. I've just experienced one of the most traumatizing events of my adult life, being on stage, and that darkness, like unless if you've never experienced utter failure on stage in front of a crowd, you have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. But if you're a stand-up comedian or a musician and you've had bad shows, you totally know what I'm talking about. So I had it's soul crushing. It is a soul crushing experience, and if you're not mentally strong, you won't overcome it. And not only was this a soul crushing experience, but it happened to come from this massive inflated drug induced high, this plateau I was on. I had this overwhelming belief in myself, and it all came crashing down with these failures. And even during this month I'm out in the camper in November, I'm still thinking, you know what, I have what it takes. I can figure something out. I'll be an artist. I'll start painting. I started dabbling in painting, and I was thinking, oh my god, this is amazing. Somebody offered to buy what I had created, and so I thought that was the next thing I was supposed to do, but that turned out to be a joke. I'm not a great fucking artist. I can kind of make somewhat interesting paintings, but I'm not a painter, you know what I mean? I don't have that skill set. I could develop it maybe and make, interesting shit, but so I'm out in this camper for a fucking month, and then I'm kicked off the farm. I've only got a minute left of this episode, and I'm thinking there's another episode, or there's another fucking part of this episode. So I'm kicked off the farm. I gotta go to the fucking homeless shelter. I spent 3 months in the homeless shelter. Yeah, there's another part here. So I guess expect part 4 of episode 13. Because there's more to this story. Anyway, I'll just add here at the end my usual shit. You would be doing me such a huge favor and such a huge honor if you like the show. Subscribe to me on YouTube, Positively Insane Podcast. Give my Facebook page a like and a follow. Again, it's the same, Positively Insane Podcast. Follow me on Twitter, Positively IPC. and give me some feedback, man. I do all of this for you guys. I do it for the feedback. I don't do it for anything else. I love you guys, and peace.